Durban Supply is calling it quits. After 20 years, we're selling leases to famous buildings all around the world. For 12 hours only, drive south until you see the moving van. No checks or credit cards, please.
For your favorite comics, for the real gossip of the local social set, and news when there's room left over, the Simville Picayune can't be beat. Buy one today.
Living music by long-dead composers. The finest endorsements and sincerely tasteful emergency broadcast messages. Radio Sim 4. Falling victim to the petty and trivial? Escape with music for serious people. Radio Sim 4.
The Simville Picayune guarantees an accuracy rate of at least 75% overall on published facts, and 95% overall on available parking mentioned in our ad pages. Buy one today.
This is a bulletin from the Picayune Interurban News Service. The contraption recently seen in the city skies is not, repeat not, a UFO. That has actually been identified as a flying saucer from outer space. Citizens are advised to panic, loot, and otherwise cause as much destruction. Citizens are urged to walk, not run, to the nearest exit.
For light bulbs, crystal goblets, or whatever, the Simville Picayune is the best for packing and wrapping. And with little or no news, there's little or no waste. Buy one today.
Like most pudding lovers, I prefer Harry's pudding. Other puddings don't seem as, well, good as Harry's. Whatever he does, it sure makes a difference. Harry's, engineered for smoother texture.
The Pause of Distinction. Radio Sim 4.
My cat is finicky, so when I heard about Mr. Fuzzy's mouse tail and asparagus flavor, I was skeptical. Well, my cat likes it so much, he's learned to use the can opener. And I like it too. Mr. Fuzzy's is really the cat's meow.
Hi, this is Chaz Maudlin. You know, everybody claims that their water is the best, so I checked it out for myself, and I discovered that Aquacampo is better than any of them. Why? It's imported! Aquacampo, Congas, or Sensagas.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. If you are within the sound of my voice, you are urged to panic, loot, and cause as much destruction as possible. Remember, this is only a test.
The SimBank is eager to help you. For the next few days, SimBank loan officers will have pens and paper at their desk so you can fill out applications easier and faster.
SimBank, not affiliated with any legitimate financial institutions.
Believe me, there's nothing like a refreshing bottle of frozen glacier water. Some waters taste, well, watery, but frozen glacier has a bold, hearty taste that really stands out. Frozen glacier, water, and more.
Living music by long-dead composers, the finest endorsements, and sincerely tasteful emergency broadcast messages. Radio Sim 4. Prestigious music to stimulate the mind. The station of excellence in this or any other city. Radio Sim 4.
My cat is finicky, so when I heard about Mr. Fuzzy's mousetail and asparagus flavor, I was skeptical. Well, my cat likes it so much, he's learned to use the can opener, and I like it too. Mr. Fuzzy's really is the cat's meow.
Uncle Bobby's Molasses Mushroom Surprise has natural selenium for active adults who may not be getting enough. And like all of Uncle Bobby's fine products, it can be eaten with or without a spoon. When we say surprise, we ain't kidding.
If you want to make the big money, plucking chickens might just be for you. Class is forming soon, so ask your supervisor for the day off and check out an exciting career in chicken plucking.
Falling victim to the petty and trivial? Escape with music for serious people. Radio Sim 4.
Are you confused by all the deodorants available? Help is as close as the nearest can of Orville Stink Away. Works gently and is guaranteed to be at least no worse than what you're using now. If unsatisfied, return and use portion for store credit.
Trim inches off your hips, add years to your life, and achieve financial success with this one amazing product. Franchise is available for a limited time, and financing is available. Check our ad in the Picayune.
Nobody likes unsightly spots. They can be a real problem. That's why you should rely on Spot Out from NutriBleach Labs. It smells good, it cleans better, and it tastes great. What more could you want?
Bob's Temps use a higher percentage of licensed technicians, so you know a Bob Temp will know where to put that monkey wrench. Bob's Temps.
The Pause of Distinction. Radio Sim 4. The Weldon Hampshire Spring Towel Collection has over 97 different shades of gray and black. So subtly hued, only a fool can tell the difference. Weldon Hampshire's refinement over the common.
Bob's dollar changing service converts flimsy paper currency into long-lasting quarters. Try our 2-for-1 special. Send in $10 and get 18 quarters plus some nickels and dimes. That's Bob's. Only the purest natural ingredients go into Snurdler's water, with no artificial coloring or flavoring. Snurdler's, the best water in green or orange bottles.
Prestigious music to stimulate the mind. The station of excellence in this or any other city. Radio Sim 4.
Attention pilots, have you been crashing into buildings? Have speeders been getting on the interstate and disappearing? Denim that's rough against your skin can rob you of your competitive edge. But a little softened felt in the rinse cycle can give it back.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I hate my job, Ruth. It's dull and boring.
Then do what I did. I went to Bob's Temps. They found me a great job.
Wow! That's a great idea! Bob's Temps, you say?
Bob's Temps.
This is Sim1, purveyor of music, provider of ads, an official emergency frequency in this and many other cities. This is Sim 1, playing randomly selected tunes from a unique collection of .wave files occupying the majority of your available disk space.
Magruga's Copter Institute offers training for careers in hangar management and logbook verification, among many others. We've helped people for almost a year now. We can help you. Magruga's.
How do you do it, Jane? We're both temps, but all I do is filing. You've got your own phone exchange.
I'm a Bob's temp. Skills are okay, Phil, but not enough. Bob's temps opens the door and I walk through.
Bob's temps, huh? I'll try 'em.
Preferred by Sims, cats, llamas, and other forms of higher intelligence, this is Sim 1. Sim 1, invading the awareness of discriminating Sims since the early days of vacuum tubes.
Only McGruger's Bursto Clean in your internal combustion engine adds polyhydrodiglyceride with ionized free radicals. Tests concluded this could improve overall engine performance. Your results may vary. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. McGruger's Bursto Clean.
Hi, Buzz Biffle here. Invisible dirt can interfere with vision just like dirt you can actually see. And if you can't see it, how do you know it's gone? You need a Total Clean windshield washing system. It gets rid of the stuff that might not even be there.
This is a public service announcement. When you lick stamps, make sure you get the corners and around all the edges and sides, not just the top.
SimDue, the best music at the lowest possible sampling rate.
I don't like wasting time and money. That's why I use Primal Forest bottled water for everything. It does what water should, but faster and for 20% less than other brands. Primal Forest. Wet and fluid.
Osterman syndrome, the lack of interest in television caused by excessive channel changing, can be tragic. Send your donations to the National Osterman Syndrome Foundation, Box 19A, General Delivery, Gazoo's Mistake, Nebraska.
More music, more ads, less talk. Sim2A.
You insure your home and your car, but do you insure your helicopter upholstery? You do if you use horse hocker seat and dash cleaner. Leaves behind a fresh pine scent with no toxic vapors below 5,000 feet.
If you sit a lot, you need Tushy Cushy, made of space-age polymers for firm molding. Tushy Cushy is machine washable, dries in minutes, never needs ironing, and safe for pets. One size fits all in 8 attractive colors. Tushy Cushy, no buts about it.
I want a good breakfast, but my bus leaves in 3 minutes.
Who's got time for lunch with all this work? I'll just eat a can of frosting.
The Simville Picayune makes no demands on your already busy schedule. Buy one today. Sim2A, we fix the hits, mix the bits, nix the ticks, glitz the kits, all for you, all the time. Sim Due, music to fly by, ads to annoy you, and the best official information.
I want the best for my family, so for vacuum-packed bricks of military surplus nutritional substitutes, I go to One-Eyed Bob's, where clerks double bag on request. Follow the fog till you run out of gas, then turn left. Bob's.
Grisman Colantonio Academy can train you to be a hangar manager in just 3 weeks. Then you're the boss. Pilots respect you, children revere you, and people outside the industry envy your casual lifestyle. Financing is available, so call now.
We left a Mr. Fluffy's scratching post in a rainforest near Bombay, where a colony of Bengal tigers used it for a week. They left in frustration. Our special blend of catnip and steel-belted radial tires holds up to the most determined feline destructive tendencies. Mr. Fluffy's, the cat's meow.
take my family to Wolf Down's all-you-can-eat restaurants. I feel good knowing that no health code violation against them has actually been proven in court, pending appeals. Free parking. Canadians welcome.
Horsehacker and Associates can provide all your accounting needs. Our staff has the basic arithmetic skills necessary to get it right the first time, and certainly by the third. Discredited financial advisors can give you an edge. A new location every week. Horsehacker.
Pilots avoid more buildings with Stetterman's turning apparatus than any other. Our Hydrotorque suspension struts mean that no matter which way you turn, that's where you'll go. Stetterman's, when the city won't get out of your way.
Night shift is bad enough without a stale liverwurst sandwich. Wazonsky's liverwurst stays fresher longer and won't discolor lettuce. What's more, you can add a slice of cheese or a pickle. Wazonsky's, formerly living things.
You don't need a brain to know that Scheimholt's Copter sale gives you the best deal. We've got everything, and free windshield cleaner when you take a test flight. Open till dusk where the freeway ends at the wilderness with no off-ramp. Scheimholt's.
You're not at your best if one part of you is flying on city patrol and another part is worried about your cat. Did you change the water? Is there enough kibble? And litter? Forget it. In fact, perhaps you did forget it. Mr. Fluffy's cat checking service once a week ensures your cat does not extract revenge.
Sim 3, music, info, and emergency frequency everywhere, and we smell good. When you're in the greater Gazoo's Mistake area, be sure to drop in on Fred and Ellie's old-time soda stand in Crazy Golf. 3 kinds of delicious shakes, and no golf clubs over 7 pounds. Bring the parents, bring the kids, bring the dog. We're under the freeway by the floating power poles.
Most boaters agree, when their boat turns over and they need a helicopter pilot, they'd rather be standing on a hoosen rod than any other boat. You're easier to spot when you're on a hoosen rod, and easier to spot means easier to rescue. Hoosen rod. Looks great even when sinking.
Simple Farms canned peas are round, green, and oh so delicious. Untouched by human hands, from pickin' to packin' to pantry, all Simple Farms canned fruits and vegetables stay fresh for months. And our cornflakes are nothing to sneeze at either. Your grandparents knew Simple Farms.
Sim 3, we grabbed it, we played it, we're buffering another one for ya.
Most helicopter pilots say they prefer rescuing people from Hussenrods than from other boats. No one knows why boats turn over, so don't take unnecessary chances. Make sure you're in a Hussenrod for maximum rescue potential. Hussenrod, stronger bottoms for frantic wavers.
Tonight on UHF 101, Randy cooks up laughter when he makes an omelet for his sister on Oh No, Not Again! And all Central Park hears Bob and Ann disagree over the color of the bed sheets on third floor studio. UHF 101, where taste is not an issue.
You want everything from your water bucket. Fireproof, round, sturdy, of course. But when people see your bucket, do they see confidence? They do if they see a Gildman bucket. Onlookers rated the water fall pattern from a Gildman as better than from any other bucket. Gildman, the fire's as good as out.
Sim 3, not pre-programmed, just random.
Stederman's turning apparatus use the finest selenium, tempered with ionized free radicals which exceed federal guidelines, so there's no submechanical hesitation like with other struts. Stederman's, when the city won't get out of your way.
Hey, Bill, that's your third bottle of water.
I guess it's just not wet enough. I'm still thirsty.
Here, try Abyssal Plains. It's from the bottom of the ocean.
That's really good.
That's because natural pressure squeezes out all the impurities, and it's really concentrated.
In bottles and handy gel caps.
It's a 2-hour special on UHF 101. First, a change of plans for murder at the company picnic on Rick Boozin, LA freelance. Then one-hit wonder rock groups meet vampires from the other side on The Blessed and the Cursed. Entertainment for the blurry-eyed. UHF 101.
Sim 3, up to, then over the edge.
When static hiss is a problem, cab drivers, copter pilots, and bike messengers prefer Glob's sugarless bubblegum. There's less selenium, so you don't make a bad situation worse. And it doesn't attract ionized free radicals, reducing the chance of severity of lightning strikes. Globs. Got one?
For the best clothespins, it is to Gaylord that people look. Better than ours, there ain't any. Nobody holds a clothesline better to keep clothes from falling to the ground than us, whether wet or dry yet, or even windy. And if you drop one, it only weighs maybe half an ounce. Money back if we're not satisfied.
Hassled by high-pressure salespeople with useless products who won't take no for an answer? Then you need Bob's Wrist and Elbow Wax. This patented formula shields you from unwanted solicitation. Operators ready to take your credit card number and send you a tube before you change your mind. Don't hesitate. Call now.
Sim 1, invading the awareness of discriminating Sims since the early days of vacuum tubes.
injured or cited by aviation officials, Horse Hacker and Associates can match you up with a lawyer and possibly a congressman who'll get you everything you've got coming, times 10. Even if you weren't there when the event happened, maybe. Urban height violations are our specialty. Find our number on the walls near public phones everywhere.
The Simville Picayune has more blank space than suggested by state or federal guidelines, so it takes less time to read. That means there's more time left over for other things. Spare time is a luxury these days, so don't waste it. The Picayune. Buy one today.
Night shift coffee is preferred by the discriminating helicopter pilot to coffees of lesser distinction. The Surgeon General's warning on the side of each can is your assurance of total coffee satisfaction. Inconvenient, unbreakable, acid-resistant ceramic jars.
Sim Due, music to fly by, adds to annoy you and the best official information.
Just 1 quart of Bob's water enhancer in your water bucket, and you'll see the difference on your very next fire mission. The miracle ingredient T34 actually bonds water to fire, so you finish your mission faster, with less residue and no unsightly rash. Non-toxic under most conditions. Bob's Water Enhancer.
Hey Duffers! Been slicing at too many water hazards lately? Then you should try the Sim Golf Course, opening soon. Design your own course with no water at all, or put the 13th hole on its own island and drag your friends down to your level. Sim Golf, your golf course, your way.
All aboard for a fascinating cruise to beautiful Sim Isle. Scenic beaches, lovely rainforest, endangered species, plagues, and shark attacks. All yours for the asking with courageous agents to do your bidding. Come see Sim Isle while there's still a paradise to be had.
Sim Due, the best music at the lowest possible sampling rate.
Howdy, partners. It's time again for the Sim Farm County Fair. Lock the barn, saddle up old Bess, and get ready for good food, fun times, the biggest rutabagas you ever seen. Planters, cows, sheds, and plows, sorghum aplenty, and prize-winning gladiolas. The Sim Farm County Fair.
This is a public service announcement. Be sure to rinse thoroughly when so instructed on shampoo bottles. Want the best in modern city living? Look no further. Sim Tower offers high-rise luxury condos at attractive prices. Stores, restaurants, and entertainment all under one very tall roof. And spacious, usually roach-free hotel suites. Sim Tower. Tall enough to block the sun, small enough to be your home.
Those folks at Sim Life Industries have done it again, with their delightful blend of toucans, wallabies, and stegosauruses. Genetically engineered, handcrafted, and corn-fed, they make wonderful pets. And these creatures are just the latest in a long line of unique and unusual animals. Sim Life Industries, building whatever it takes.
More music, more ads, less talk. Sim Due.
SimCity and SimCity 2000. You've heard about them, you might have seen them. Never the same city twice, no matter how hard you try. You're flying in a SimCity 2000 city right now, and there's plenty more where this came from. SimCity and SimCity 2000. Now pay attention to your flying.
Pilots, cab drivers, our plane for Belize leaves in 3 hours and our loss is your gain. Prices so low we're in trouble with federal agencies. Landing gear, hangar fixtures out the door for less than cost, and the 18-wheeler heading north toward out of state. Be there.
Hey, you want to upgrade your copter maybe? I'm paying top dollar for copters just like yours. Come down, trade in, move up, and fly out in a machine you thought you'd have to win the lottery to buy. We carry our own accounts and shred the records every quarter so you don't have to. Smooth copters where the water meets the wilderness.
SimDue, we fix the hits, mix the bits, nix the ticks, glitz the kits, all for you, all the time.
managers, check this. Windshield cleaners, bottled water, lead alloyed machine screws, socket wrenches from around the world, all under one big roof for one day only. Giveaway prices on hundreds of non-existent items. Follow the plane into the desert and land when the green light flashes. No one has more inset head machine screws than Weeby Screws. Right-hand thread, Allen head, made of lead, aisle 2, row 5, third from the back, and plenty of them. One or a gross for the same low price. Foreign currency exchange on the premises. Weeby Screws.
Andy's Produce Chamber offers the lowest prices and highest quality. Tomatoes and broccoli, to name but a few items, flash frozen, shrink wrapped, and cut into bricks for convenient stacking. Andy's, just outside most city jurisdictional limits.
Sim 3, up to, then over the edge.
Attention merchandisers and service providers, get the most out of your ad dollars. Niche markets have special needs and we can provide them. Esoteric bandwidths, unregulated frequency modulation, and ground-to-satellite amplitude conversions are specialties. See us at the trade shows in the unmarked booth near the restrooms.
This is a bulletin from the Picayune Interurban News Service. This is a bulletin from the Picayune Interurban News Service. The Loch Ness Monster, formerly confined to Scotland and the vivid collective imagination of conspiracy theorists, has been sighted in a lake somewhere in the wilderness. The National Guard has been activated, and people who have had recent dental work are being advised to exercise caution.
3 days only at the Coliseum, Bob's Monster Truck Mash. See Bustosaurus Rex, 12 tons of grinding yellow metal. And new Sunday only, see Leviathan, the flame-throwing station wagon. Tickets on sale now. Be there.
I feed my family quality foods from Les Marquises Pristine. They have over 95 quality checks on potato chips and candy bars. 95! I feel safe with Les Marquises Pristine.
Falling victim to the petty and trivial? Escape with music for serious people. Radio Sim 4.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. Had this been an actual emergency, this is a public service announcement. When flying, pay no attention to public service announcements. And supermarket specials.
Pilots, get ready for the International Belts and Accessories Show. Hundreds of franchise dealers and contacts in the biggest show of its kind. Tickets on sale soon, pending bankruptcy litigation.
This is a bulletin from the Picayune Interurban News Service. The immense orange ball seen rising over the eastern horizon early this morning is expected to fall slowly towards the west sometime in the evening. No injuries have been reported, and rumors of panic have been greatly exaggerated. Scientists are calling it a phenomena and advise citizens to prepare for reoccurrence in the very near future.
Sim Due, music to fly by, adds to annoy you and the best official information.